So he shredded that weed off and then put it in his helmet liner and pounded it on a rock, and it would take the kernels off the wheat, and then he would hold it up and the wind would blow the kernels out. And he made an old tin can with water, boiled that, and boiled that wheat, and basically what it was flour and water. But it fixed me up. I was somewhat better. And the funny part was, afterwards I learned they had a doctor with one of the other loggers, and he used charcoal for guys that had dysentery. But they neglected to tell us anything about it. But anyhow, like I said, we were on the road like 80-some days, and this one night, we're staying in this barn, and a German officer and interpreter come over to the barn, and he says, "Get ready, we're going to move out. In a few hours you will be free. We're going to march you to the front lines." Well, of course, that was music to my ears. And this English prisoner stood up and said, "Listen, blokes, I've been a prisoner longer than any of you." He said, "I got the beer cap medal. That was 5 years a prisoner." He said, "If we go out there tonight, nobody's going to know we're unarmed prisoners. So let's just refuse to march and stay right here until they liberate us." So it made sense, and this is what we did. And the next morning, they had removed all the guards except one old guy, and he's walking back and forth by the barn with a rifle, and the rest of them went over in this little village. We could see them across the field. And about 6:15 that evening, the British armored cars and tanks were coming down the hillside. And that's how we got liberated. So of course the British, they went according to the Geneva Convention. They put a guard around us so that we could not take revenge on any of the guards or the civilians. So it wasn't too long after that, they told us the next morning we were going to march to Lüneburg. So then, a short while later, this American captain came. And he got rid of the British guards, and he told us, he said, "I understand they told you we're going to march to Lüneburg tomorrow morning." He says, "You guys have done enough marching." He says, "Tomorrow morning you take off in all directions and find transportation. I don't care if it's a bicycle, a horse, or a buggy, or an automobile, what have you." He said, "And we'll form a convoy and we'll ride to Lüneburg." And he said, "If anybody's interested," he said, "the Americans are about 3 kilometers down the road." He said, "Feel free to stop down and see us." So my waist gunner and I went down the next morning, and I'm all amazed. I had never seen a tank before. They have this huge field surrounded by tanks, and the road solid with Germans coming into surrender because they did not want to be captured by the Russians. They're surrendered to the Americans. And the commanding officer, who happened to be, I forget now whether he was a major or a lieutenant colonel, but a real nice guy, he came up and started talking to my waist gunner and I, and he told us that Hitler had issued orders that all prisoners be shot. So Eisenhower broadcast on German frequency right afterwards and said, "If any prisoners are harmed, the people that do the shooting or the harming will be held responsible, not the person that gave the order." So he said, march your prisoners to the front lines, and they'll be freed and you'll be taken prisoner. So that's what our guards had done. Thank God our German officer listened to Eisenhower. But anyhow, this major told us that they did liberate this one camp, and they had all the guards lined up out front and taking their weapons, and they didn't hear any cheering or anything. They went inside the camp, and there wasn't a person alive. They had shot them all. So he said he gave the orders, and they shot all the guards. So anyhow, we're standing there talking to him, and about that time, these two German officers come in to surrender, and they're driving a 36 Ford convertible wood burner. And the major said to my waist gunner and I, he said, there you are, take that car and head for France. Just start driving west. So we went over to the car, and the two German officers, and the one on the passenger side, my waist gunner looked at him and said, haben Sie Auer? And when the guy went like this, my waist gunner grabbed his watch, and the officer that was driving, he just looked at me and unbuckled his watch and handed it to me. So that's what we did. We took that car, and we got in that convoy, and the next day we drove to Lüneburg, and when we got to the Elbe River, that was it. We wasn't allowed to take the car across the Elbe because it belonged to the Russians. So we had to get out of the car and walk across the pontoon bridge into Lüneburg. And my waist gunner said, do you want any of that stuff that's in the car? I said, I don't want anything to remind me of this country. So I locked it up, and I still have the keys today to that car. And we went into a British camp there. So real quick, the British started taking us across Germany in the back of trucks. They did not give us a shower or any clean clothing. They did feed us, but I mean, I was bit up so bad, I had lice so bad. You can imagine sleeping in the barns like that and going for 3 months without a shower or anything. But anyhow, they were taking us so far every day in the back end of trucks. And they had us, this one British camp, we were ready to take off, and I saw this B-17 land. So I talked to the pilot, and he said, how many Americans are here? And I can't remember what it was, but there was quite a few. And he said, you know, every time we land here, the British tell us there's no Americans, so they have us flying English prisoners back to England. He said, just wait right here. And he went up in the cockpit, got on the radio, and come down, and he said, go round up all the Americans. We're going to fly you to France. So this is what we did. And I remember when I got up into the nose of the plane, they put 30 on each plane. And I asked him, I said, where's the parachutes? He says, you don't need any parachute. He says, these are all milk wrens, no fighters or flak. So they flew us to a paratrooper outfit in Roy, France. It's a very small town there. And these guys could not have treated us any better if it would have been our families. They were just wonderful to us. And they did put up portable showers out on the hillside. And they had us go to the shower, take everything off, down to your birthday suit, throw it in a pile, go through the showers. Before you got in the showers, they squirted you with delousing powder. And then when we come out the other side, they gave us underwear, shoes, socks, pants, and shirt. Brand new. But oh, that shower, this is better than the first meal. I mean, that was just wonderful. So I was well pleased and happy. And the CO said, if any of you guys want to go into town, be my guest. He says, there's buses running every 15 minutes, doesn't cost anything. You can go into town, walk around, do whatever you want. He said, but I'm not going to write out passes for you. He said, if anybody says anything, just tell them you're a ramp. So my waist gunner and I, we got in a bus and we went into town. No sooner got off of the bus and the Jeep pulled up with the OD in. He said, where's your hat, soldier? I said, I don't own one. He said, don't tell me you don't own a tie either. I said, no, sir, I don't. He said, what outfit are you from? I said, the paratrooper outfit out the road, and I pointed out. He said, what's the number of it? I said, I don't know. He said, what the hell do you know? And I told him, I said, well, the CO told us if we wanted to go into town, go ahead, but he wasn't going to write out passes. If anybody said anything, just tell them you're a ramp. So the officer saluted us and said, sorry, have a good time. And it took me a while longer before I found out that ramp meant recaptured Allied military personnel. And from there then, from that camp, then they took us to Camp Lucky Strike to wait for a boat to go home.
What was your most memorable experience when you served?
I guess the day I got liberated. It's hard to describe. Just be able to walk wherever you want to walk without a guard stopping you or somebody eyeing you from the tower, you know, with a machine gun. But it's just out of this world. I mean, to be free like that.
What kept you going while you were serving, especially while you were a prisoner?
I think the majority of times I thought of my mother. What would she do? So I had to keep myself alive.
Obviously it worked. Do you have any funny stories from when you served?
Yeah. I think I might have told you before, but when we got into the prison camp, the first one, and the permanent party there talked to us, told us that all these German guards can speak English, but they'll never let you know. And they said if any of them comes into the barracks, just the first one to see him, holler as loud as you can, goons up. And then everybody shut up and just stare at him. And he won't stay. So I thought to myself, well, boy, if they ever find out what goon means, you know, they'll shoot us. Anyhow, we had this one guy, this guard, we gave him the name of Sneaky Pete. And he used to love to sneak the door of the barracks, kick it open, jump inside at attention and scream, goons up! And then of course everybody would laugh and he'd laugh and he got his point across.
If you were given the choice to go back and do it again, would you?
anytime at all.
Do you have any regrets about going to war?
No. I do regret going in as late as I did, but I couldn't help that. But to me, it was almost rougher to stay at home and not go because everybody's calling you 4F, which meant physically unable to go. And you want to go fight for your country.
Okay, is there anything else you would want to add?
I would like, through some miracle, to go back all those 60 years and see the young people here have the same attitude as we had when the Japs bombed us and we all enlisted, or most of us did, to save this country. I'd like to see a difference in our young people, realize that. And I try that by putting on these programs at the high schools.
That's great. And I know you've got a display there, real briefly, if you'd like to hold that up and everything. And when you left the military, that was when now?
November 7th, 1945.
And your final rank when you left the service was?
Tech sergeant. That's the stripes here. This is the Air Medal. This is a Good Conduct Medal. This is the European Theater of Operation. This is American Theater of Operation. That's the Victory Medal. And that's the POW medal. That's before. That's when I was a young fellow and enlisted. This is the 8th Horse patch. Of course, this is the gunner's wings. This is my dog tag. And this is the German dog tag down here. And this little guy right here is Caterpillar. They give you that for using a parachute to save your life. And, it's a little gold caterpillar with a ruby eye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.